Questions. People often say change takes time, and I agree. But sometimes all it takes is 1 week, one realization, and 3 simple habits. Once, a young man came to me and said, questions. Gaur Gopal Das Ji, I feel stuck. I'm tired, unmotivated, distracted, and my life just feels directionless. I smiled and said, congratulations. He looked confused. Questions. Because when you realize you're lost, I said, you've already started finding your way. And so, questions. Today I want to share with you the 3 simple habits that changed my life in just 1 week. And I promise if you practice them, they'll start changing yours too. Questions. The first thing I did, I stopped touching my phone the moment I woke up. You see, most people begin their day reacting, not creating. Before we've even brushed our teeth, questions, we're already comparing our lives to someone's highlight reel. So I started a small ritual every morning. For 5 minutes before touching my phone, I wrote down 3 things I was grateful for. Questions, if it was basic, I'm alive, I have food, I have Wi-Fi. By the 4th day, something beautiful happened. My perspective changed. Questions. I realized that gratitude doesn't change what we see, it changes how we see it. When you wake up in appreciation, you don't chase happiness, you create it. Questions. You can't hear your inner voice if your mind is a marketplace of notifications. Every evening I decided 1 hour, no phone, no laptop, no noise, just silence. At first, questions, it was uncomfortable. The silence screamed louder than my ringtone. But then in that silence, I started listening to my thoughts, my emotions, my purpose. Questions. Our gadgets are great servants, but terrible masters. When you disconnect from the world for a while, you reconnect with yourself. And that 1 hour became my power hour. A time to read, meditate, questions, or just reflect. Within a week, my anxiety reduced, my sleep improved, and my creativity soared. Because when the mind rests, the soul speaks. Questions. Procrastination is not about laziness, it's about fear. I used to delay everything. Workouts, projects, journaling. Then I started a rule, I'll just do it for 10 minutes. Questions. If after 10 minutes I still don't want to, I'll stop. Guess what? 99% of the time once I started, I didn't stop. Momentum is magical. Questions. We don't need to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. So whatever your goal is, start small. A 10-minute walk, a 10-minute reading habit, a 10-minute break to breathe. Questions. Big changes don't start with big moves. They start with small, consistent steps. Take a deep breath. Now imagine if you could just wake up with gratitude, detach from noise. Questions. And do small actions daily. How much peace, clarity, and energy would you gain? In 1 week, these 3 habits didn't make me rich, famous, or perfect. Questions. But they did something more powerful. They made me present. Questions. I stopped living for someday and started living today. I realized happiness is not found when life gets easier. It's found when our mind gets clearer. And when your mind is clear, questions, your path becomes clear. Change doesn't begin in the world around you. It begins in the world within you. You don't need to climb mountains. You just need to make your bed with gratitude. Questions. Unplug from chaos for an hour and take 1 small step every single day. Questions. The most powerful way to start your day is not with your phone in your hand, but with gratitude in your heart. It's amazing how something so simple can make such a big difference. Questions. But let me tell you this. Most people don't even realize how they start their day shapes their entire life. Let me ask you a question. Questions. What's the first thing you touch when you wake up in the morning? Be honest. For most people, it's not the toothbrush, it's not a glass of water, it's the phone. We wake up, questions, and before our eyes are even fully open, we scroll through notifications, WhatsApp messages, Instagram reels, emails, questions. Missed calls, we instantly jump into the world's noise before we even hear our own voice. And what happens? Before 7 a.m., we're already comparing questions. Look at their vacation. Bah, look at his card. Look at her body. And there you go, you've already started your day feeling like your life is not enough. I remember one day, questions. I caught myself doing exactly that. I woke up, grabbed my phone, and saw my friend posting pictures of his Europe trip. Instantly, I thought, whoa, he's enjoying life. Questions. What am I doing here? And suddenly my day, which had barely started, felt dull. Isn't that how it goes for so many of us? That's when I decided to change one simple thing. Questions. For just 5 minutes every morning, I decided to press gratitude. No phone, no news, no comparison. Just 5 minutes, me, my notebook, and my thoughts. At first, it felt strange. Questions. I didn't know what to write, so I started simpler. I'm grateful for the bed I slept in. I'm grateful for the breakfast I'll have. I'm grateful for my parents. The next day, questions. I went deeper. I'm grateful for the friend who checked on me yesterday. I'm grateful for the mistakes I made. Questions. Because they're teaching me patience. I'm grateful for the sunrise I get to see. By the third day, something clicked. Questions. I realized that gratitude doesn't change your circumstances. It changes your perspective. Let me give you a simple example. Two people wake up to the same rainy morning. One says, questions, what a terrible day, I hate the rain. The other says, thank God for the rain, the earth needed it, and I get to enjoy a cozy cup of tea. The weather is the same, questions, but the experience is entirely different. Why? Because of gratitude. When we practice gratitude, we train our minds to notice abundance, not absence. Questions. You stop focusing on what's missing and start celebrating what's already present. That's when real joy begins. Think about it. We live in a world where everyone wants more. More followers, questions. More money, more success, more recognition. But have you ever paused to appreciate what you already have? Someone is praying for the things you take for granted. The job you complain about, questions. The roof over your head, the meal you call boring. Gratitude brings you back to that awareness. I once met a cab driver who changed my perspective forever. He was smiling the whole ride. Questions. Singing to himself, cheerful and calm. I asked him, Bhaiya, you seem so happy today. What's the secret? He laughed and said, Sir, every morning I thank God that I have eyes to see the road. Questions. Hands to drive and passengers like you who trust me. What more do I need? I was speechless. This man, who probably earned far less than many of us, had something we often forget. Contentment. Questions. Gratitude is like wearing new glasses. The world doesn't change, but the way you see it does. You begin to see beauty in small things. The aroma of your coffee, the smile of a child. Questions. The comfort of your blanket, the hug of a friend. You realize life has always been beautiful. You just never pause to notice. And science agrees. Questions. Studies show that people who practice morning gratitude experience higher levels of happiness, lower stress, and even better sleep. You see, the brain can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. Questions. Gratitude literally rewires your mind toward peace. But here's the beauty. You don't need fancy journals or complicated rituals. Just 5 minutes. When you wake up tomorrow morning, questions. Before you touch your phone, just sit up and whisper 3 things you're grateful for. It could be as simple as questions. I'm grateful for another day to live. I'm grateful for my parents' love. I'm grateful for the food I will eat. If you want, write them down. Writing makes it real. Questions. You'll notice that your mornings will feel lighter, calmer, and brighter. And when you carry that feeling throughout the day, small problems don't shake you as easily. Questions. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you smile because you're grateful to have a car. Your boss scolds you. You breathe because you're grateful to have a job. Questions. Gratitude gives you emotional stability. It becomes your inner shield against negativity. There's a beautiful saying, when you focus on what you have, you'll always have more. Questions. When you focus on what you lack, you'll never have enough. So if you want to transform your life in just 1 week, start with those 5 minutes every morning. Questions. Make gratitude your first thought of the day, not comparison. Because the energy which you start your morning is the energy that drives your entire day. Questions. You don't need to travel the world or achieve big goals to feel fulfilled. You just need to notice the blessings that are already around you. The laughter of your child, the kindness of a stranger. Questions. The warmth of your tea, the sunlight that still shines after a storm. Gratitude is not a reaction to happiness. It's the reason for happiness. So tomorrow morning, before you unlock your phone, questions, unlock your heart with gratitude. 5 minutes, 3 things every day. Because when you wake up counting your blessings, life starts adding more to your list. Questions. We live in a world where silence has become awkward and disconnection feels almost impossible. Our phones have become our alarm clocks, our calendars, our mirrors, our friends, even our therapists. Questions. We wake up to notifications and go to sleep to scrolling. Our lives are so plugged in that even when we sit in peace, our minds are buzzing with the next vibration, the next ping, the next post. Once. Questions. I was sitting in a cafe observing people, something I love to do. At one table, there were 4 friends. You'd imagine laughter, conversation, maybe some teasing. Questions. But no, each of them was looking down, scrolling. Their food arrived, and instead of saying, wow, that looks delicious, they said, wait. Questions. Don't touch it. Let me click a photo. They spent 5 minutes taking pictures and 2 minutes eating. They were together yet completely apart. Questions. That's when I realized we're not addicted to our phones, we're addicted to distraction. We're scared of facing our thoughts, our emotions, our inner silence. Because when we pause. Questions, the mind starts talking, and not everyone is ready to listen. So I decided to try something simple yet radical, an hour of digital detox every day. 1 hour where no phone, no laptop, no TV. Questions, no music, no social media, just silence. The first day was difficult. I kept reaching for my phone without realizing it. It was like my hand had a mind of its own. The silence felt heavy. Questions, I started to feel restless, as if I was missing out on something important. But what could I possibly be missing in those 60 minutes that I hadn't already drowned in all day? Slowly. Questions, I started to notice something beautiful. The world didn't collapse without my attention. The messages could wait. The emails didn't vanish. And in that quiet space. Questions, I began to hear a sound I hadn't heard in a long time, my own thoughts. One evening during my detox hour, I went for a walk. No earphones, just me, the road, and the sky slowly turning orange. Questions, for the first time in months, I noticed how the breeze felt on my face. I saw a group of kids playing cricket, laughing uncontrollably. I saw an old couple walking hand in hand. Questions, it was like life had been happening all around me, and I had been too busy staring at a glowing rectangle to notice it. You see, our gadgets are incredible. They connect us to the world. Questions, but if we're not careful, they disconnect us from ourselves. Technology is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. When the phone is always in control, peace will always be out of reach. Questions, let me share a simple observation. Have you noticed that sometimes, even when you're doing something enjoyable, like having dinner with family, you keep checking your phone? Questions, the food is delicious, the people are dear, but still your attention is divided. Why? Because your mind has become conditioned to seek stimulation every few seconds. Questions, that constant switching from one app to another, one thought to another, exhausts your brain. That's why at the end of the day, you feel tired not from physical work, but from mental clutter. Questions. During my 1 hour of digital detox, I started doing small things. Reading a physical book, journaling, watering my plants, even just sitting in silence. At first, it felt like doing nothing. Questions. But then I realized that nothing was actually everything. My mind started to breathe. My heart started to slow down. And my creativity started to wake up. I began to write better. Questions. Think clear and even sleep deeper. You see, when you constantly consume, your brain becomes a storage room. When you pause and reflect, it becomes a workshop. Questions. That's when real ideas and clarity are born. Let's be honest. How many times have we checked our phones without a purpose? Questions. We open it to reply to one message and end up watching 45 minutes of reels. We laugh, we scroll. We forget why we even unlocked the phone. We've traded our focus for fleeting dopamine hits. Questions. So I made a simple rule for myself: after 8 p.m., no screens. The first week was tough, but by the second week, I started craving that peaceful hour. Questions. It became my sacred time, a time to recharge not my battery but my soul. One evening, during my detox hour, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. No music, no phone, just the sunset. Questions. And I realized how much I had missed that orange glow melting into the sky. I could hear birds returning home, people chatting in the distance, the hum of life itself. Questions. It was a reminder that peace was never gone. I was just too distracted to feel it. The truth is, when we disconnect from the digital world for a while, we reconnect with the real one. Questions. We reconnect with the laughter of our family, the warmth of our thoughts, the rhythm of our breath. We reconnect with life, raw, unfiltered, and real. So if you feel tired, anxious, questions, restless, maybe it's not more coffee or motivation you need. Maybe it's a moment of stillness, a moment without screens, a moment with yourself. I once read a beautiful line. Questions. Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. Isn't that true? So give yourself that hour. Keep your phone away, put it on silent. Questions. Or better yet, switch it off. Sit with your thoughts. Feel your heartbeat. Watch the world move without you trying to control it. Let silence be your companion, not your fear. In that 1 hour, questions, you will find what social media can't give: peace, presence, and purpose. You'll realize that happiness was never in the next notification. Questions. It was always in this moment, waiting for you to notice it. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you'll stop seeking validation from the virtual crowd. When you learn to rest your mind, questions, you'll wake up with clarity. So take that 1 hour every day, your sacred hour. Because the more you disconnect from noise, the more you connect to your nature. And in that connection, questions, you'll discover something priceless: the quiet joy of simply being alive. Questions. Let's be honest. We all have dreams, goals, and ideas that we keep postponing. We say things like, questions, I'll start from Monday, I'll begin when I have more time, or I'll do it once I feel ready. But somehow Monday keeps moving further away, and ready never really comes. Questions. We live in an illusion that someday will be perfect, and that someday often turns into never. I remember a young man once came to me and said, Gaur Gopal Das ji, I want to start going to the gym. Questions. But I just can't get myself to do it. Every day I promise myself, and every day I fail. I smiled and said, you don't need to go to the gym for an hour. Questions. Just wear your shoes and step outside for 10 minutes. He looked confused. Just 10 minutes. I said, oh yes. If after 10 minutes you still don't feel like continuing, come back home. Questions. But you must start. But he called me a week later laughing. You were right, Guruji. Once I stepped out, I couldn't stop. That 10 minutes turned into 45. And that's exactly how it works. Questions. You see, the biggest barrier to success is not effort, it's starting. We often think motivation leads to action, but it's actually the other way around. Action leads to motivation. Questions. The moment you start doing, even for a few minutes, your mind begins to follow your movement. The hardest part of any journey is the first step, but once you take it, questions, momentum begins to carry you forward. Think about it. Have you ever told yourself, I'll just clean this one drawer? And before you know it, you've cleaned the whole room. Questions. Or, I'll just write the first paragraph, and suddenly you're 3 pages deep. That's the magic of momentum. Once you overcome the initial resistance, the energy starts to flow naturally. Questions. But why 10 minutes? Because 10 minutes is small enough to silence your excuses. Your mind can argue against an hour of exercise, but it can't argue against 10 minutes. It's achievable, simple. Questions, and non-threatening. It tricks the brain into starting. And once you start, you often don't want to stop. Let me share a personal story. There was a time when I wanted to write a book. Questions. Every time I sat down to write, my mind would say, you need at least 2 hours of peace and inspiration. And guess what? I never found those 2 hours. Questions. I was waiting for a perfect moment that never came. Then one day I decided, I'll just write for 10 minutes. That's it, no pressure, no expectation. I wrote a few lines. The next day, questions. I wrote a few more. Day by day, those small sessions added up. And soon I had a full manuscript. What I learned was profound consistency beats intensity. Questions. The 10-minute rule is not about doing less. It's about overcoming inertia. Because once the engine starts, you can drive as far as you want. A stationary car takes effort to move. Questions. But once it's rolling, even a small push keeps it going. Our minds work the same way. And here's the beautiful part. This rule applies to every area of life. Questions. Want to meditate but can't sit still? Just meditate for 10 minutes. Want to start reading but never find time? Read 1 page for 10 minutes. Want to learn guitar but feel lazy? Strum for 10 minutes. Questions. You don't need to do it all at once. You just need to start. One woman once told me, I always wanted to start painting again, but life got so busy. One day I told myself, okay, questions. I'll just paint for 10 minutes before bed. I didn't realize those 10 minutes would become the best part of my day. Now my kids paint with me too. Her face glowed as she said it. Questions. That's the power of small beginnings. They grow into something beautiful. Procrastination is not laziness, it's fear. Fear of failure, fear of imperfection, fear of not being good enough. Questions. But the 10-minute rule breaks that fear. Because when you lower the bar to simply starting, you take away the weight of perfection. You stop saying, I have to finish it, and start saying, questions. I'll just begin. And that shift is transformational. There's a story of a teacher who told his students to write for just 10 minutes every day, no matter what. A year later, questions. Some of those students became published authors. Why? Because they stopped waiting for inspiration. They created it through habit. When you start small, questions, you give your brain a chance to build trust in yourself. You begin to believe, I can do this. And that self-trust becomes the foundation for discipline. Soon 10 minutes becomes 30. Then an hour. Questions. Then a lifestyle. Let me tell you something. The difference between who you are and who you want to be lies in what you do for those 10 minutes today. It's not about grand gestures. Questions. It's about the small, consistent acts that compound over time. Just like drops of water fill an ocean, 10 minutes of daily effort can create a sea of change. The mind loves to overthink. Questions. It imagines the mountain and gets tired before even climbing it. But when you focus only on the first step, the first 10 minutes, the mountain starts to shrink. Questions. You realize it's not as impossible as it seemed. So next time you feel lazy, anxious, or unmotivated, Don't think about doing everything. Just commit to 10 minutes. Tell yourself questions. I'll just start. Whether it's studying, exercising, meditating, or creating. That small start has the power to change everything. Questions. And if after 10 minutes you truly don't feel like continuing, stop. But I promise you, most days you won't want to. Because once you taste the satisfaction of progress, questions, you'll crave more of it. The just do it for 10 minutes rule isn't just a trick, it's a doorway. A doorway from thinking to doing, from planning to achieving, from dreaming to living. Questions. The only thing standing between you and your goal is the courage to begin. So, my friend, don't wait for the perfect time. There's no perfect time. There's only now. Start today. Start small. Questions. Start for just 10 minutes. Because sometimes the smallest step in the right direction ends up being the biggest step of your life. Questions. There is a quiet kind of magic that happens when you pause from the noise of the world and give your mind something peaceful to feed on. A good book or your own breath. Questions. Most people think peace is something you find on a mountaintop or in a temple. But truly, peace is something you create, one still moment at a time. Questions. When I started my 1-hour digital detox every evening, I realized something strange. The silence was beautiful, but my mind was restless. Questions. It had been running at full speed all day, jumping from app to app, message to message, thought to thought. And when I took away the noise, the mind didn't immediately calm down, it fidgeted. Questions. Like a child deprived of toys. That's when I discovered the power of reading and meditation during that sacred hour. Let me tell you, questions, these two habits, reading and meditating, are like food for the mind and medicine for the soul. When we read, we invite new thoughts in. When we meditate, questions, we understand the thoughts already inside us. One expands the mind, the other empties it. Together they create balance. Let's talk about reading first. Questions. People often say they don't have time to read. But interestingly, the same people have time to scroll endlessly. Reading, even for 20 minutes, gives you something scrolling never will. Depth. Questions. Social media gives you information. Books give you wisdom. I remember a young student once told me, Gaur Gopal Das J, I want to be successful, but I don't know where to start. I asked him, questions. Do you read? He smiled awkwardly. Not really. I watch videos instead. I told him videos give you a spark. Questions. Books give you fire. When you read a good book, something that uplifts your thoughts, you begin to see life differently. You start noticing patterns, understanding emotions, questions, and connecting dots you never saw before. Reading builds your mental muscles the way exercise builds your physical ones. Let me share a small story. Once, while reading a book on mindfulness, questions, I came across a line that said, don't just do something, sit there. It made me laugh, but it also hit me deeply. All my life I'd heard, don't just sit there, questions, do something. But this book reminded me that sometimes doing nothing is exactly what your soul needs. That one line changed the way I looked at productivity. Questions. That's what reading does. It gives you quiet awakenings, those aha moments that shape your perspective forever. So during my digital detox, I began reading every day. Questions. Some days I'd read spiritual books, other days biographies of people who turned pain into purpose. And slowly my evenings began to change. I no longer felt the need to scroll. Questions. The words I read stayed with me long after the pages closed. They whispered wisdom into my thoughts and guided my actions the next day. But then, there were evenings when even reading felt heavy. Questions. My mind didn't want to absorb. It wanted to release. That's when I turned to meditation. Meditation is not about sitting cross-legged on a mountain chanting mantras for hours. Questions. It's about creating space between you and your thoughts. It's about watching your mind, not controlling it, not judging it, just observing it. In the beginning, meditation felt impossible. Questions. I would sit down, close my eyes, and instantly my brain would start making grocery lists. Or it would replay an argument from 3 days ago. I would get frustrated and think questions. I can't do this. But then I realized that's normal. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to become aware of your thinking. Questions. I started small, just 5 minutes of slow breathing. I would breathe in deeply and exhale slowly, watching my breath like a curious observer. With time, those 5 minutes became 10 questions, and then 20. And what I found was astonishing. My mind, which used to be like a noisy marketplace, slowly became like a calm lake. Thoughts still came, but they didn't disturb me anymore. Questions. One evening during meditation, I noticed something powerful. The same sunset I'd seen 100 times suddenly looked different. Questions. It wasn't just the sky turning orange, it was an experience of gratitude. I felt alive, connected, and at peace. That's the beauty of meditation. It turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. Questions. Sometimes people say, I don't have time to meditate. I tell them gently, you don't have time because you don't meditate. Meditation doesn't take time. Questions. It gives time by clearing your mental fog and helping you focus better. When you read, you fill your mind with knowledge. When you meditate, you clean your mind of clutter. One adds clarity. Questions. The other adds calm. And in that one detox hour, when you practice either or both, something profound begins to happen. Your inner world starts to glow. In today's world, questions, where we constantly chase outer achievements, reading and meditation bring us back to the inner achievements that truly matter. Peace, focus, empathy, and awareness. Questions. They remind us that before we conquer the world, we must first conquer our mind. So I encourage you, in your digital detox hour, don't just stay away from screens. Stay close to yourself. Questions. Pick up that book that's been gathering dust. Read a few pages, not to finish it, but to feel it. Or sit quietly, close your eyes, and breathe, not to escape life, but to meet it fully. Questions. You'll notice something subtle yet powerful. The more you practice this, the more centered you'll feel throughout the day. You'll react less, respond more. You'll worry less, understand more. Questions. And you'll realize that happiness isn't in the next notification. It's in the stillness you create within. Because at the end of the day, questions, the real detox isn't about putting your phone away. It's about reconnecting with the deeper part of yourself that you've been too busy to hear. So tonight, when you take your digital break, questions, don't rush to fill it with noise. Fill it with meaning. Read something that makes you think. Sit in silence and let your breath become your teacher. In those moments, questions, you'll discover that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. And when that peace fills your heart, even for a few minutes, questions, you'll realize that this quiet hour might just be the most valuable part of your entire day. Questions. There's a funny thing about human nature. We all want to achieve great things, but we often wait for the perfect time to begin. We tell ourselves, questions, I'll start working out when the weather is better. I'll study after dinner. I'll start writing once I'm in the right mood. And somehow, questions, the perfect moment never seems to arrive. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and before we realize it, we've spent more time planning than actually doing. Questions. Procrastination is not just laziness. It's a quiet fear wearing the mask of comfort. We delay things not because we don't want to do them, but because we are afraid of the effort. Questions. Afraid of failure, afraid that it won't be perfect. Our minds whisper, it's too much, it's too hard, you're not ready. And we believe that voice. But here's the truth. Questions. Action is the only cure for procrastination. And the simplest way to begin is with a rule so small, yet so powerful. The just 10 minutes rule. One day, questions. I was talking to a college student who said, Gaur Gopal Das ji, I have so much to study, but every time I open my books, I just feel tired. I tell myself I'll start tomorrow, questions, and then tomorrow never comes. I smiled and said, don't study for 2 hours, just study for 10 minutes. He looked puzzled. Only 10 minutes, I said. Wes, set a timer, questions. Study for 10 minutes. If after that you still don't feel like continuing, you can stop, but start. Or a week later, he came back, eyes bright with excitement. It worked, questions. I'd sit down for 10 minutes, and by the time the timer went off, I was so focused, I didn't want to stop. That's the beauty of this rule. It bypasses the biggest obstacle in our path, questions. The mental resistance to start. You see, our minds are like heavy trains. It takes effort to get them moving, but once they start rolling, momentum does the rest. Questions. The first step is always the hardest, but when you make the goal small, just 10 minutes, the mountain suddenly looks like a hill. Questions. You stop saying, I can't, and start saying, it'll just start. And that small shift can transform everything. Let me give you an example from daily life. Questions. Imagine you come home after a long day at work, tired and drained. You promised yourself you'd exercise, but your body says, not today. Now, if you think about doing a full 45-minute workout, questions. It feels impossible. But what if you said, I'll just stretch for 10 minutes? You put on some music, you start moving, and soon your energy rises. Questions. That 10 minutes becomes 30 without you realizing it. The hardest part wasn't the exercise, it was putting on your shoes. The same applies to creative work. Questions. Many writers struggle with writer's block. They wait for inspiration to strike, but inspiration only visits those who are already writing. So I tell them, don't wait for the perfect idea. Questions. Sit down and write anything for 10 minutes. And magically, once the pen starts moving, the ideas begin to flow. Creativity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. Questions. One of the greatest traps of procrastination is the illusion of perfection. We want to start when everything feels ideal, when the mood, time, and situation are all aligned. Questions. But life rarely offers that kind of harmony. If you wait for the perfect wave, you'll miss the ocean. Starting small removes that pressure. You don't have to do everything perfectly. Questions. You just have to begin imperfectly. There's a story I often share about a pottery class. The teacher divided the students into two groups. One group was told, questions. Make one perfect pot this semester. The other group was told, make as many pots as you can. Quantity matters more than quality. At the end of the term, questions, the group that focused on quantity produced the best quality pots. Why? Because by starting experimenting and making mistakes repeatedly, they got better with each attempt. Questions. The first group spent too much time thinking about perfection and never created much. That's what happens when we delay action in pursuit of flawlessness. Questions. The just 10 minutes rule gives you permission to be human. It tells you, you don't have to do everything right now. You just have to do something. It builds consistency. Questions. And consistency creates confidence. Each day that you show up, even for 10 minutes, you strengthen your discipline muscle. Questions. You prove to yourself that you can be trusted to take small steps. And small steps are what lead to great transformations. I started applying this rule to my own meditation practice. Some days, questions, my schedule was packed and my mind said, you're too busy to meditate today. So I'd reply, all right, just 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes often turned into 30 questions. Even on the days they didn't, I still showed up. And that consistency became more valuable than perfection. The most beautiful thing about the just 10 minutes rule is that it removes guilt. Questions. You stop punishing yourself for not doing enough. You start celebrating the fact that you started at all. It's a small victory that builds inner momentum. Questions. And once you experience that little burst of accomplishment, it's addictive. The good kind of addiction. Here's something to remember. Questions. The distance between someday and today is just 10 minutes. That's all it takes to cross from intention to action. Whether it's working on your fitness, learning a new skill, questions, cleaning your room, or writing a journal, start with 10 minutes. Some days that 10 minutes will expand into hours, other days it won't. But every single day it will count. Questions. Because progress isn't built in giant leaps. It's built in tiny steps taken consistently. And those 10 minutes you give every day are not just minutes, they are seeds. Questions. Seeds that grow into habits, habits that shape your character, and character that defines your destiny. So, the next time you hear that lazy little voice in your head saying, questions, not now, smile and reply, just 10 minutes. That's it, no pressure, no perfection, just presence. Start small. Start messy, start now. Questions. Because those 10 minutes today might be the spark that lights up the rest of your life.